You're watching California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We are coming to you from the Cannon House office building in Washington, D.C. We are joined by Adam Schiff. He's a member of the United States Congress. Sir, thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be with you.
We appreciate it. I want to speak with you about guns and gun violence. As you know, in the United States Senate recently, it appeared there'd be some movement on the question of background checks, but that body, which has a 60-vote threshold for moving legislation forward, was not able to reach those 60 votes. What's your sense on the future of gun control in the wake of the violence at Sandy Hook Elementary?
Well, I think that measure will be back, and it was a grave disappointment for all of us that support common sense gun safety measures. We have a partial background check system right now, which is kind of crazy. I think most Americans don't fully understand how it works. And essentially, if you go to a licensed gun dealer, they will do a background check to make sure you're not a criminal or aren't so mentally ill as to be a danger. But if you get turned down, you can go out in the parking lot of that same store and buy that gun from somebody off the back of their truck, and they don't have to do a background check. That's crazy.
What's also interesting is there's a concept, for those that don't live or work in the gun industry, of the gun show loophole. You can go to a gun show, and the gun show proprietor is not required to do a background check. Is that right, sir?
That's exactly right. And I think because that term is so common, people think the loophole only applies to gun shows. It actually applies to everyone but the licensed dealers. So whether you buy it off a truck, or you buy it at a gun show, or you buy it in someone's backyard, there's no requirement of background check. It's only when you go to the dealer. In fact, you can go online and you can buy a weapon from a licensed dealer and have the background check, or you can go to another web page and buy the exact same gun, no background check. That makes no sense whatsoever. The Toomey Manchin bill was a partial solution to that. It would have gotten rid of the gun show loophole, so it would apply background checks in gun shows. It would have applied to most online transactions where there's advertising involved, but it still would have exempted private-to-private sales, most private-to-private sales. So even that partial measure couldn't get through the Senate. It just incomprehensible. But Brad, I think it's going to be back.
You do?
I do. The Senate president, and this is a tough issue in Nevada where he comes from, is nonetheless a tenacious man.
Harry Reid.
I cannot believe that Harry Reid is going to let this go. So this issue is going to be back, and tragically, it comes back every month or 2 months or 3 with a tragedy.
I have to ask you, we think about what happened in Boston recently. The weapons of mass destruction in that case were bombs, manufactured bombs. If the weapons had been assault rifles or another type of gun, do you think that would have changed the debate?
It would have been a different debate, but it's hard for me to imagine something that was more moving, more grievous than what took place at Sandy Hook. I mean, to see those young lives taken that way, if that doesn't motivate us, I mean, I don't know what would.
So, but that's the question. Sandy Hook didn't change the laws. Virginia Tech did not. The Milwaukee Sikh incident did not. Aurora, Colorado did not. Gabrielle Giffords, a member of your caucus.
She's Columbine, Stockton, Granada Hills, I mean, the list goes on and on.
So why? Why don't we see bona fide change?
Well, I think we're going to, because I really think we've reached a tipping point on this issue. And yes, we had a serious setback in the Senate, but there are now forces coming together. Mayor Bloomberg, one of the more effective ones, who are now starting to fund the opposition. We've always been out-financed by the NRA, out-organized by the NRA, but now those in support of common sense measures are getting organized for the first time, and I think it's going to make a difference.
I want to continue this conversation when we come back. For our viewers on HLN, we thank you so much for joining us. For our other viewers, we'll be right back on California Edition. Sir, you mentioned Michael Bloomberg, and he is the mayor of New York. He supports an organization called Mayors Against Gun Violence. Recently, there was a convention held by the National Rifle Association, and you may have seen that Glenn Beck was there, a well-known conservative commentator, and he showed a picture of Mr. Bloomberg giving us the Nazi salute. And it's clear where the NRA is going with this. I mean, they really see the question of gun violence and gun control as an impingement on their freedoms, on their Second Amendment rights. And so, given that divide, how does the Congress come together?
Well, the NRA leadership may view it that way, and some of the right-wing commentators do. But the American people don't. And even a majority of gun owners don't view it that way. The Toomey Manchin bill, in fact, something broader than that, a truly universal background check bill, has the support of 90% of the American people, has the support of an overwhelming majority of gun owners. So here, the leadership of the gun lobby is out of step with its own members. The Congress is way out of step with the American people. And that can only happen for so long. So I'm optimistic, even though there's a lot to be dispirited about in what we saw in the Senate recently. This issue is not going away, and those of us that are determined to pass gun safety measures aren't going anywhere either.
I've seen those polls, and they are persuasive, but the Senate was only able to muster 55 votes, still a majority. In the House, that body is dominated by Republicans. And you saw the recent NRA convention, and it was really a salute to Republican support. So what motivation do Republican members have to move?
Yeah, the only motivation they have is their constituents calling on them to do it, to do the right thing. And I think that the senators who voted against these common sense measures are already facing repercussions out in their states. And that's not something they've had to deal with in the past. In the past, the only repercussion was if they didn't have a perfect score with the NRA, they had to worry about their right flank. Now they've got to worry about their middle, that the people in their state, in their districts, want something common sense. And now there's a new calculus.
Right. It's interesting you mentioned that. You probably saw similar news reports with, for example, Senator Kelly Ayotte of New Hampshire. She went through a series of town hall meetings after she voted against the Manchin-Toomey bill, and she was really just lampooned by her constituents. Jeff Flake, a new member, senator from Arizona, similarly has really taken a hit in the polls. Will what constituents are saying in your mind change these members that come from arguably purple states?
I think it really will. I think it already has, but you're going to see a lot more of this. They're just plainly out of step with their constituents. And the reality is, this isn't even a Second Amendment issue. We already have background checks. No one can plausibly claim that making that ineffective partial background check system more effective is somehow a violation of the Constitution.
What they're saying is we need to make the current background check system more effective before we add another layer.
Well, that's part of their argument, and no one has a problem with making the current system more effective. But when the current system only applies to 60% of transactions, how effective can it really be? I mean, even if you enforce it to the nth degree, you're still leaving a huge back door open.
I want to talk about your district specifically, and specifically the city of Glendale. It's very interesting. They've been making national news lately. There has been a provision before the Glendale City Council to ban gun shows on public property. Glendale Unified has talked about adding panic buttons and security cameras. What do you think about these efforts by localities to take this issue into their own hands?
Well, you know, what we're seeing in the wake of the failure in the Senate is local communities like Glendale, others in my district like West Hollywood who've been out in the vanguard of gun safety legislation for years. You're seeing the states move ahead in Colorado and in Connecticut and elsewhere, basically saying, Congress, if you can't get your act together, we're going to do what we can at the local and state level, and I applaud them for doing it.
What's interesting is, yes, many states are moving in favor of gun control, but some states are going in the opposite direction. Arkansas, Michigan, Mississippi, a lot of these, quote, red states are trying to loosen gun restrictions. It just further shows that divide.
There is a big divide, and I remember when I was first elected in 2000, I was invited on a panel. We were asked about what's the nature of the gun issue in your district, and I said, well, in my suburban LA district, when people think about guns, it's not so much about hunting or self-protection. It's about gang violence and drive-by shootings. They asked a Democratic colleague of mine the same question, Brad Carson of Oklahoma. And he said, in my Oklahoma district, it's also not so much about hunting or self-protection, it's about Lexington and Concord.
It is.
And that shows you, even within two Democratic districts, how diverse the issue is.
His name is Adam Schiff. He is a member of the United States Congress. My name is Brad Pomerance. This is California Edition.